heart not to have at least a small soft spot for Porsche's MA1 4-litre flat 6. It's one of a dying breed of naturally aspirated feralness which, since the 991.2 generation of the 911 GT3, went even more feral with its rev limit reaching an astonishing, a spine-tingling 9,000 RPM. Quite frankly, it's one of the greatest engines on sale. Now that bit really isn't in question. What is where's the best place to stick it? Here, behind the back axle of a 911 GT3, or here, in the middle of a Cayman GT4 RS for the perfect weight distribution. Of course, not that long ago, such a home for this fabulous engine would have been completely unheard of. The 911, despite its obvious flaw, you know, that engine slung out the back, is still the pinnacle of Porsche's range. It's the Jesus model, worshipped by Porschephiles all over the world, and everyone knows that the Cayman has a more holy DNA, but you just can't go upstaging the Son of God, can you? Well, they have, sort of. You see, talk to anybody at Porsche and they'll still tell you that the GT3 or the GT3 RS that's coming is still the ultimate GT product. Whereas the GT4 RS, despite its 7-minute 4-second lap around the Nürburgring, which, by the way, is 23.6 seconds faster than the standard GT4, it feels more like a skunkworks car, an engineering fun piece, a car for the ultimate track day or Sunday morning blast. So, we thought we would wake up early on a Wednesday actually, but thinking about it, the day of the week probably isn't the most critical thing here. What is critical is, look, we've got the two cars back to back, ready to take out on just the sort of roads that make you want to go and have some fun. Remember to head over to PistonHeads.com after watching this video to research and buy your next car. But before we head out, just very quickly, let's have a run through the cars just to refresh ourselves of what we've got. So, 992 generation GT3 has the swan neck rear wing, the first one to have that, which is more aerodynamically efficient. And then down there, we've got the rear diffuser, which is really now energizing the air underneath the car as well. But the biggest change, of course, was that double wishbone suspension up front, which is there really just to make the race cars faster. And as we said, it is all about racing with the GT3. But the Cayman GT4 RS has many exquisite details too. Just look at those NACAR ducts in the carbon bonnet which gather cooling air and to feed the brakes and then release it into the wheel arches, and those cutaways in the front wings which direct it out again and along the side of the car. There are also GT3 RS style vents in the tops of the front wings to release air pressure from the front arches, and look, moving back here, ducting where the rear quarter windows used to be, so the engine can now gulp air from just behind the driver's ears. Then finally at the rear of the car we have the similar swan neck rear wing to the GT3, but here it's creating an aero package that's said to deliver 100 kilograms of peak downforce. Right, a question then. Is the GT4 RS even more fun than the GT3 on the road? And to be sure, let's start off by reacquainting ourselves with Big Daddy. I've written and said so many things about why I love the GT3, and all of it still stands true today. Every time I drive a new supercar, from the McLaren Artura to the Ferrari 296 GTB, it's this car that I always use as the benchmark to set it against. And I include in that even the really, really hyper expensive stuff like the Lamborghini Ultimate, which we drove recently, and if you click the link you can listen to the video of that, and it's screaming V12, which is one of the few engines that I think can really compete with an engine as good as this. But why is this the benchmark car? I mean, especially when you think that the latest supercars have got 6, 7, well even 800 horsepower, or more than 800 horsepower in terms of the 296. And then it's the electrical assistance on top of that that makes them even more instantaneous in the way they deliver their power. But the GT3 is just a reminder to me about the pointlessness of building the fastest or the most powerful supercar. Because what I find with those cars very often is that they're missing something crucial, something really vitally important when it comes to a car like this. And that is fun, the element of pure, undiluted fun. And if you don't really get what I'm talking about, think about it. All of these cars have got derivatives in racing series, proper racing cars born of them. And every single time the racing cars have less power than the road cars. And yet what road could you ever use 800 horsepower plus instantaneous electrically assisted torque on. Not this one, that's for sure. And yet these are precisely the kind of roads that people imagine going on when they think about driving a car like this. Now at the same time, I'm not trying to pretend that this car is like some underpowered MX-5. Of course it isn't. It's got 510 horsepower. It does 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. It's still properly punchy. But the difference is, what makes it crucially a different car from those turbocharged or electrically assisted cars is the naturally aspirated element of it. The fact that I haven't got that wall of torque that immediately slaps my internal organs against my rib cage. I can almost just exploit its natural flaw. The fact that there is a hole in the torque curve. Let me just show you, let me just demonstrate what I'm talking about. We'll slow the car down, get it into second gear, low revs, put my foot down, and it's picking up gradually, and then goes through that meteoric rise up the revs, and every time there's something different to listen to, something different to enjoy. And yet, I had my foot down there for probably a good solid 5 seconds, and I wasn't breaking the speed limit. That wouldn't happen in a 296, I can assure you. And then of course the other crucial difference between this and the other supercars is that when you do extend it all the way to the top of the rev range, you get that special GT3 maniacal whine. I've described it before like the pain of valves and valve springs every time you hit 9,000 RPM. And that's exactly what it feels like and sounds like when you drive this car. And so yeah, you know, these cars are flawed. I know they are. Just like the 911's flawed with its engine out the back there. But that's when you look at things just in terms of paper, just as a technical exercise. But when you look beyond that technical exercise, you see the purity of something, and that's why this car is the benchmark for me. This car is the car I've always judged every other car against. Then there's the way the GT3 rewards with its steering, which, my God, is hyper alert, but full of feel and fabulously weighted. And a ride that when you stick the dampers into sport takes out all the slack from the body movements. So yes, it's firm, but also beautifully controlled. And you can really start to lean on the car with confidence through these wonderful roads linking corner after corner. Despite its race car intent then, for me, the GT3 is still a far better road car than an awful lot of its road car rivals. It still sets the bar for fun. Or does it? Does the GT4 manage just to go one better? Now the truth is the GT4 RS has been nobbled a little bit by Porsche. I mean, come on, you didn't really think they were going to let it trounce its big brother, did you? But we're only talking 10 horsepower, so it's only gone down from 510 to 500. And actually they do say that the decrease is down to the increased length of the exhaust and the extra back pressure that creates rather than any deliberate ploy to stifle this car. And torque is down a little bit too, so it's gone down from 347 pounds-foot, which you get with the GT3, but here it's got 332 pounds-foot. But really, again, we're talking small, insignificant differences. And the thing is, that is compensated for slightly by the fact that this thing weighs less. It's 1,415 kilos, so that's a 20 kilogram drop, assuming both cars have a PDK gearbox. And bearing in mind, that is one difference with the GT3. You can have a manual, whereas with the GT4 RS, it's a PDK only. That's down to the fact they couldn't get a manual gearbox, apparently, that would fit with the engine being swapped around 180 degrees. And just like the GT3, this PDK is mesmerisingly good. It just fires you so seamlessly and quickly, gear after gear after gear. But you have got a gear lever of sorts, because I got the sequential shift if I want to, so I can go forward for upper gear and back for, well, you're going to get the idea. And then I've got the change paddles behind the steering wheel, which are really nice little aluminium paddles. And as with the GT3, there's so much going on through the steering as well. It just sparkles with enthusiasm over every pimple and pore in the road. And it's so beautifully weighted as well. However, it is a much calmer front end than the GT3. The GT3 is so darty and so intense, and that is something that cropped up since the double wishbone suspension appeared on the GT3, whereas here it feels more like the older GT3, the 991.2. And it's not only the steering, I love the brakes, for example. The carbon ceramic discs on this one, which is still an option on the GT4 RS, but they're so beautifully finessed through these, oh, as you come down there, you just lean on them and they give you all the progression you need. And it's not just that, because right now I'm being bear hugged by this lightweight carbon seat that comes as part of the Visac pack. And I can feel all the messages, the information coming up through the car, through this seat. So as I go through a series of bends, I can just tell now whether the front's just getting light or whether the rear's about to step out there on the power. All that information is just coming, feeding through. But I tell you what isn't calmer than the GT3, and that is the noise. I feel like I've been having to shout the entire way through the in-car in this GT4 RS, because it's there, right there behind my lug holes. I can hear it sucking and breathing. The thing is alive, I tell you, it's so alive. It's like every detail of the GT3, it's the same engine, every detail is there, it's all the same noises, but just cranked up to 11T in this car. This car is properly enlivening. I tell you what it feels like. It's like going for a morning swim in a plunge pool full of liquid nitrogen. That's how enlivening this car is. I genuinely thought that the GT3 was already a work of art. But this thing, it's like standing in the Louvre, staring into the Mona Lisa's eyes, and then she just reaches out of the canvas and grabs you by the cheeks and gives you a smacker on the lips. It's that kind of work of art. It's just better. Well, let's start with the GT3. It is still one of the most focused and engaging and enjoyable cars to use on the road. I remain completely convinced of that. It's a brilliant car, but it is impossible, physically impossible, to spend time in a GT4 RS and not get out, stare back longingly and say, I'll have that one please. It is properly good. Somehow it manages to be a bit more road orientated with that calmer, more old school Porsche steering and also that sublime mid-engine balance. But then you've got this fully uncut version of one of the best engines you can buy. I mean, there really can't be too many things that make you think of a GT3 as sounding a bit meek and flat, because it simply isn't. Yet that's genuinely what I thought about it after getting out of the GT4 RS, that it was a bit quiet. That's because the noise the GT4 RS makes is something quite extraordinary. And if this doesn't go down in history as being one of the all-time great cars, then I will eat my hat. Well done, Porsche, not just for making it so good, but for making it at all. Because you didn't have to, yet you did. So before I end up eating my hat, which I don't think I will, I'm going to tip it to Porsche just for building this thing in the first place.